You're listening to Global Predictions for 2022 with Holly Hall from AskHollyHall.com. I'm a master astrologer. I have a background education in philosophy and psychology. I am certified in neurolinguistic programming, as well as certified as a past life regression hypnosis therapist and a clairvoyant. Enjoy. Namaste.
So 2022 is, a lot of people are going to be wondering, I think the main thing is what's going to happen with COVID, what's going to happen in elections. Since we're Canadian, we're all in Ontario, I'm going to speak mostly around that, but I do have a US prediction as well. And also about what's happening with our jobs. And if you don't mind, I would like to speak on a more deeper spiritual reason of why all of this is happening as well too. And then I'll go month to month about what's happening that way. There is a significant shift. I spoke about it before around the planet Jupiter that's going back and forth from Aries to Pisces, and that's extremely significant in what's going on with COVID around the world specifically. And then we're going to talk about you guys individually and find out what your questions are. I would say predominantly most of the questions that I've been getting recently is around career, basically the last 6 months. And most of it was at the beginning because people were not wanting to go back to work. They were at home for a certain amount of time and they didn't really want to go back. And they realized that how much their job was consuming and sort of hijacking their happiness. And they were, what else can I do around my career? I will tell you that I've successfully advised quite a few people in quitting their corporate jobs, starting successful businesses. That's been very successful, surprisingly. And to them, not to me, being people advocate for themselves in the workplace too. And specifically when I was talking to last week, who I've spoken to a few times before, advocated for herself, and she was able to stay at home, even though no one else was. And she doesn't even know why. I said, probably because they didn't advocate for themselves. She goes, well, I know two that did, and only I'm able to. People that are very hard workers, a lot of people that got Virgo and Capricorn or Saturn energy tend to be very hard workers, and they don't give themselves the credit that they deserve around how hard they work. Those are the ones that employers don't want to let go. And because they don't recognize their own sustainability within a company because of how hard they work, they're reluctant to ask to stay. Most employers don't want to lose people like that. So they're much more, and that was, in this case, that was that particular person. So just starting off with, I'm going to start off with the whole global picture around this. Now, I do have a book that's out, 101 Answers from the Universe, that I wrote in September of 2019. It was launched, self-published on Amazon, February of 2020, as we all know, shortly after that COVID started. So there is a lot of predictions of what's going on there for the next, right now we're at the next 8 years, because predictions are around 2025 and 2020. However, some people have had to ask me to point out, where exactly is the prediction? I do have some that specifically say 2025 and 2030, which I'll mention now. But a lot of it has to do with the type of life that we are moving towards living. This is what Source has told me. It's not I do have some of my own viewpoints because I'm pretty much vegan. I eat sustainable fish, but I'm pretty much vegan. And one of the reasons was ethics. And I went down the rabbit hole over 4 years ago around veganism. All of the documentaries, was shocked at the control that capitalism and consumerism has over us, and how it's made us addicted to comfort, and whatever will bring us a source of comfort, and some of them actually creating pain and needing more comfort because of that. And that's the haul around sort of the food chain for me at that time. That's basically my only view that I've sustained since then. Everything I'm going to share with you is what I get from source, and it gets downloaded to me from source. And I've been getting a ridiculous amount of downloads in the last 2 weeks. Unfortunately, some of them I'm told I can't share yet, which drives me crazy. But when they say that, I don't do it because I know that there's a timing for it. In the book, it's all broken down into different categories, and then one of them is the educational system, one of them is the agricultural system, one of them is a pharmaceutical system, and then there's love and what is a soulmate and so much other things on top of that. The love one I shared with a group that we've had before because they were all around Sylvia's singles group. But what I'm going to focus on now is educational system and the pharmaceutical system and the agricultural system. So if any of you work for any of those or offshoots of those companies, you're going to find yourself lost right now. You're going to find yourself in a transitional period. You no longer want to stay in the job that you have. You no longer maybe want to be a part of that. You're not happy. You don't know why, but the conditions have changed. The culture has changed. The environment has changed. The structure of the business has changed. Also, you may be choosing to because you want to go more towards entrepreneurialism, or you may be in a position where you've lost your job for whatever reasons, downsizing, mandates, etc. There's all kinds of reasons why all of this stuff is happening. In this transitional period, I've worked with coaches, I've worked with therapists, counselors, teachers, people in the medical industry, people now in the alternative medical industry. I'm actually working, just as an example, with a medical doctor from BC who's a family physician. She quit her job. I coached her into quitting her job last May. And she's in limbo right now trying to figure out, what am I going to do? Right now she's totally turned off by the healthcare system, so she doesn't want to do anything to do with that remotely. But I do see in the future she will be back in it in her own with plant medicines and stuff like that. But right now she's like, I don't really care about anything around that, but she'll get there. So that's just an example of some of the people that I work with. I'm working with a therapist, a clinical therapist that works for the University of Alberta. She's now on a hiatus, which I walked her through doing, and I believe she will go back into working with more of the Indigenous people, which she has a fascination for. But right now, of course, she's burnt out and she doesn't even want to fathom that right now. She needs to take that break. But I know when it's happening. One is next June and hers is in February. This is how, if you find yourself sort of nodding your head going, yeah, I'm in that transitional period too. One of the things is that some of the jobs don't exist. So I work with a lot of parenting I work with a lot of parenting coaches, for example. It's saturated market. Life coaching or parenting coaching or business coaching or any kind of coaching is a pretty saturated market. But if you're working with children in any alternative or self-employed way, so you're not working under the government of sorts, and you're working in coaching or even teaching, even if it's working under the government and you're thinking you want to quit, there's a new educational system that's coming into place by 2025. This is the hope, right? This is what we're working towards. This is what Source wants us to do. All the kids, and I work, 75% of my clients are American, a lot from California. Many of the kids were pulled out of the system, as you know, and then put back into the system again. So far, in my calculations, half of my clients' kids didn't want to go back. And so they're keeping at home and they're homeschooling them, which a lot of parents are not liking that, etc. So one of the popular ones that's starting, and so this is proving it to me that what I predicted in 2019, right now is called pod schooling. And if you look it up, pod schooling in Toronto, it's very popular in the southern Ontario place. It's starting to really take root. It's people putting together micro schools. I think there are about 50 kids in the school, and a collaboration of working together. So a lot of these therapists, life coaches, parenting coaches, any behavioral, working with around behavior and stress management, anxiety, learning challenges, learning disabilities. There's all of those jobs are going to be in the educational system. Even mindfulness, meditation, yoga, all of these things are going to be in the school system at between 2025 and 2030. My prediction is that in 2025, it will be Not the majority of the schools will be as that progressive. So it'll still be, I'd say, about half and half. And that, because right then there's a battle. That's when the battle comes. The governing bodies will try to control it because they don't want the individualized, personalized school system to really take place. By 2030, by 2028 to 2030 is when it's going to hit full force. So there's going to be a ton of jobs for you guys in end of 2024, 2025 if you're in that arena. With the medical, it's the same thing, and it's already happening in Canada. I'm not sure of anywhere else at this point because I'm really bad at watching news or anything to do with news. I follow only the people that I rely on, and they interview all really great people. So it's not I'm just getting that one opinion. There's the same thing. There's going to be alternative solutions in Canada. It's already there. I'm not allowed to say right now because they've kind of closed their doors because they're getting quite inundated and they don't have enough doctors. There's going to be more and more of them. By 2025, there'll be a whole, we all know that it's already there. We have alternative medicine, we have naturopaths, we've got, energy medicine and functional medicine. We know it's all there. By 2025, I see a somewhat privatized, not government funded, but privatized funding, almost like an OHIP, almost like an extra care, so that people can use their own traditional medicine however they want, and also utilize the alternative one. So that's going to allow for a less of a self-employment situation and more of a, if you come to me and you belong to this healthcare system, you don't have to pay because you already are tapping into this healthcare system, and then therefore I know I'm going to be getting paid. So that's where the alternative, that's 2025 as well too. Same thing with the educational system. There's going to be a whole fight against it, and by 2028, 2030, it will become more mainstream. That's what Source is hoping for. Now, this is where it comes personally from me, and that's, as I said earlier, being vegan. I have a very educational, self-imposed educational understanding of how we are really messing up this planet. That's not rocket science. It's mainstream. You can look it up everywhere. Anyone around climate change. And if you told me climate change existed 10 years ago, I would have said no. Now I know differently. So a lot of things have to change. It's all around consumerism and capitalism, and that's in my book, 101 Answers from the Universe. I want to focus more on all of you understanding that 2022, including 2023, is a lead up, right? It's kind of like a prerequisite to get to 2024 and 2025. And so if some of you are in career situations that you're struggling with, it's most likely because you are to be an ambassador for the changes. And I can see that when I do a person's chart. And if you're interested, I can look at that now as well too. I can see if you're an ambassador for change, which means you've come here, you signed up. I believe in past lives. I believe in reincarnation. I believe that we sign up, we volunteer, so to speak, for the positions that we have in our life. So starting in January and February and March, I'm going to make those three together. We just entered, I just want to look at one of my screens. Jupiter, I'd mentioned earlier, is going to be wavering back and forth from Pisces, and that starts at the very tail end of December. So basically about a month from now, but we'll feel it a couple of days before that. And this is when globally there's a lot more. Now I'm going to talk COVID now, and then I'm also going to talk what's going on with politics and politicians as well. But I'm also going to take a look at some of the other issues that will be coming up in the news as well. That's globally. Then we'll look at you guys personally. At the tail end, this is when the healthcare system starts to take a drastic change and a drastic shift. There is a movement that begins but gets suppressed. And I see that happening in Norway, Switzerland, Australia, parts of Brazil. Understanding the medical news coming out around a very strong healing component and an advantage for us, a very strong advantage for us around healing modalities and putting these healing modalities in place. Unfortunately, I'm not sure what it is around. I mean, one of them I know is around the unprecedented times now. One of them is around a cure for a certain type of rare cancer. And another one is around drug addictions. Drug addictions that are like opioids or painkillers that people have become addicted to, not on purpose, but because it was prescribed to them for a specific reason. And now, as we know, inundated with the addiction of it. So this is some kind of a cure for that addiction as well. I do see that there's more. I know no one wants to hear this, but there's more of a regulations and mandatories and suppression or lockdowns in that time frame, starting at the end of December. However, it does lead us into May when Jupiter goes into Aries, and that's when we become warriors and fighters and fight against whatever your position is in whatever it may be. And also in May, I'm going to go back again, but I just want to jump again. May is another very similar news that comes out, like Black Lives Matter, Children's Lives Matter. That type of a news is coming out as well. I would have to, in Canada and in North America, it's in the second house. So some of it has to do with finding out the elite contributing financially, a large portion of their financials into something that everybody finds shocking. And this creates this giant movement, just like a lot of angry sort of protesting movement, just like the past one, very similar to the past ones did. Going into January and February, so I want to talk about the political venue as well, and specifically in Ontario. And everything going on now is going to continue until May. April and May is when the people start to speak up for themselves, and there's movements and protests ridiculous amount for all different reasons. Like it's the invisible as well. So because Pisces is all about the hidden and the invisible and the victims. So it's about certain groups that are not having attention spent on them as well. So let's say like the poor people in Afghanistan, and they're not being, because there's so much focus on one area that they're suffering in another area. So these are protests that are happening as well too. So it's not just around what's going on right now. And that starts in May, but it leads up in April. And a lot of it is because of this suppression in all different areas for all different reasons that's going on in January and February. The political arena, what I got down, Ford will be reelected in the United States, but something happens in the fall of 2022 and a new person comes in. And it's like everybody's going to be scratching their head going, who the heck is this person? It's like nobody knows who they are. There wasn't somebody that was a senator before. It wasn't somebody that was like a famous lawyer before. It's just like somebody out of nowhere. So that's my prediction around that. Starting in May is actually extremely positive. The download for me, I know the news of politics says that it's March where mandates are going to be lifted and everything back to normal. But my sources told me June. I don't like it either, but that's what they said. May is a part of that. Everything that happens in May, the individualization, the activism, and the protesting, etc., is all a big part of that. The one big news source that I had mentioned earlier, which is similar to Black Lives Matter, is pretty much going to die off in and around when Neptune goes retrograde, which is the end of June. It'll resurface when Neptune goes back out of retrograde again at the beginning of December. Into July and August, there is an understanding, again, political. I'm not a big political person, but I get what I get. A kind of a shaking of hands. The example I'm being given between the United States and Canada, like when they did the fair trade agreements, similar to that type of situation, except it's around resources, oil, lumber, electricity, etc. So it's around energy resources. I've also predicted that, and that's more into the August and September and November, financials changing. So there's going to be a new source of money in 3 different areas. So there's going to be more push towards electronic for 2023, only one called energy. Now, a couple months ago, I got this download that there's the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and stuff like that as well, but which will get stronger. This energy one I got about a month ago, I had no idea what they were talking about. They just said you can't see it, can't touch it, you can't. It's kind of invisible, and that made no sense to me until, and I only shared it with the people that I work with, that work with alternative financial resources. I've got quite a few financial gurus that I work with that are into Bitcoin and crypto. I don't really know a lot about it, but they do. And I'd mentioned this, and they knew exactly what I was talking about. So they said it was already in play, but none of them could tell me what it was. So just recently I got the download. Take this with a grain of salt. Resource is literally energy. So if you can provide energy and you can sell that energy to your neighborhood or to around you, and I know this doesn't even make sense, but if you can do that, like for instance, people were putting those grids on their roof and they can get the money back. I mean, that's giving it right back to hydro, etc. This is what the money is going to be, and this is between countries as well. So it still doesn't make complete sense to me, but just sort of put that under your hat. It's something that's going to take a while to roll out, like sun, solar powered, wind powered energy is going to be a commodity for people. If you're into that, you're going to see the news around that in August. I believe somebody or similar to Elon Musk is going to talk about the energy portion of it. And then in November and December, there is the announcement of the rolling out of AI for all major department stores such as Walmart's, etc. So no more real people there. The announcement of it. When Jupiter goes back out of retrograde and goes into Pisces again for October, November, that's when the news all comes out and everybody feels suppressed again. And then mid-December, which coincidentally is shopping season again, is when the protests will come around AI and around the department stores, even the banks, etc., stuff like that. So the announcement around that. So that's the predictions for that year. I know it might sound doom and gloom, but for me it's not. We need to get back our community. When I started becoming vegan, I realized that the saddest thing for me is what was happening to the farmers. And the farmers 20, 30 years ago and beyond that was a community, very strong, powerful community, and a very strong family dynamic because the farms are being carried on generation after generation. And everything that happened with the food industry and the mass manufacturing of food changed how they live. There's one on Netflix all around Monsanto's. You can just watch that, Cowspiracy. And that made me really sad about community. And then I started looking around going, how much have we lost around our community? And of course, we all know that we're glued to our screen. And this makes it difficult for us to maintain community. Now with everything else going on, communities even dwindle down more. So this is all about gaining back our community again in all different ways, all different levels, all different arenas. But you're going to find that's what it's going to move towards. So there has to be the dismantling of the current lifestyle, the addiction to comfort that they have us in, and the rebuilding of community and rebuilding. And this has to happen because it has to save the planet. And that's not rocket science. Again, you can look at all the geologists and the scientists. They're all saying 2030 is a mandate for saving the planet, or we're in trouble. And all of it has to do around that. So all of this has to happen. Because I believe in reincarnation, I believe that a lot of us volunteered in the positions that we're in to be a part of it. Whether every time you go to a checkout line, you vote, right? So it's more around that. It's more around a strong spiritual connection as well too. I go a little bit further than that. I believe in the whole universal energy and a galactic energy, so I won't go into that now, but I go a bit further than that even. If you're interested, you can follow my newsletters, and I'll talk about it in there. AskHollyHall.com is where you guys can go to get a full reading. Join me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Sometimes I'm on TikTok, always under the handle of Ask Holly Hall. And throughout 2022, you will get much more predictions from me month to month as 2022 rolls out. Namaste.